Chapter 27. Flashback from back home. The telegram arrived on an ordinary afternoon, carried by a messenger who knocked timidly at the gate. My father stepped out to receive it, his face composed as always, though his hand trembled slightly when he saw the seal. In those days, a telegram was no trivial thing. It could bring news of life or death, joy or devastation. For families who had sent loved ones into the vast, merciless sea, each piece of paper was like fate arriving at the doorstep. He opened it slowly with the precision of a man accustomed to careful gestures. His eyes scanned the walls, and for a moment he did not breathe. Then his lips moved silently. Pulau Tengah, saved alive. The joy was almost unbearable. It rushed through his veins like fire, igniting every cell in his body. He went upstairs and shared the good news with my mother, and her tears rolled down her cheeks with joy as she silently thanked God for answering her prayers. Meanwhile, on Pulau Tengah, we were beginning a new chapter of our life. At night, I often walked to the beach, letting the waves wash over my feet. I sat in the sand, staring at the horizon as though it were a bridge back to Saigon. I missed my parents with a pain that throbbed in every heartbeat. I missed my siblings, the sound of their footsteps, the smell of my mother's cooking, the quiet rituals of my family life. The sea between us was both a barrier and a threat. I told myself that the same waves touching my feet also reached the shores of Vietnam. I whispered into the wind, hoping somehow my words would ride the current back to them. Mother, father, I'm safe, I say softly. Do not worry, I think of you every day. The stars above Pulau Tengah were the same stars above Saigon. That thought gave me comfort. We were still under the same sky, still connected by something greater than distance. Life in the camp was not easy. Food was rationed, privacy was scarce, and the future was uncertain. Yet I had no choice but to live fully in the present. My sister Tam was 6 months pregnant, her second child, and she felt tired most of the time. I rose each day to fetch water, to cook rice, to watch over little Tina, who had turned 5. Tina's laughter was like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. She clung to me, played by my side, and asked endless questions with the innocence of childhood. In caring of them, I discovered a strength I had not known before. Exile forced me to grow, to step into responsibilities I had not chosen but accepted. Each day was a lesson of endurance, each small act of care a reminder that even in displacement, love could flourish. Sometimes at night, Tam would lie awake, her hand on her belly. "Xuân," she whispered, "do you think the baby will be born here or in another country?" I squeezed her hand gently. "I don't know, chị ba, but wherever the baby is born, it will be safe." She nodded, her eyes moist. In those moments, we held on each other as though our bond were the only certainty left in the world. Back in Saigon, my parents imagined scenes like this without ever hearing about them. My mother often said to herself, Xuân must be helping Chị Tâm. That is who she is, always caring, always steady. My father, though silent, felt the same. Parents know. Across oceans, they sensed our lives, filling the gaps with faith. Their days continue in quiet freedom. My mother still walked to the market, bargaining for fish, her ears catching snippets of gossip about escapes gone wrong. My father still sat on the balcony, listening to the static of foreign radio stations. He thought drifting beyond the city skyline. Outwardly, life looked normal, but inwardly, everything had changed. Every prayer at the family altar, every shared meal, every sigh carried the weight of longing. At night, when they lay side by side, my mother whispered her dreams of reunion. One day we will see them again, she said. I will run to them at the airport. I will hold them so tightly. My father turned to her, his voice steady. Yes, one day. He did not say when, because he did not know, but his conviction gave her strength. And so, across the sea, two halves of the family live in mirror realities. One half in Saigon, clinging to the telegram, filling their days with quiet endurance. The other half on Pulau Tengah, living uncertainty, yet carrying love as both burden and strength. Exile hath separated us, but hath also bound us closer. The farther apart we were scattered, the deeper we discovered the roots that held us together. The telegram had done more than announce survival. It had reunited hope. It had reminded my parents that even across oceans, their children's hearts still beat in rhythm with theirs. It had reminded me that even the strangeness of refugee camp, I was not alone. I carry my parents' love within me, just as they carry mine. That was the paradox of our story. Distance did not diminish love, it revealed its depth. 3 months in Pulau Tengah, the island of Pulau Tengah had already become something more than just a temporary stop. Though only 3 months passed, those days imprinted themselves into the memory with the weight of a lifetime. It was here, between the vast sky and restless ocean waves, that we learned how fragile and resilient human hope could be. It was also here that we celebrate the first Christmas away from the parents, away from our homeland, with nothing but longing stitched together by faith, songs, and quiet rhythms of the waves at night. Christmas on the island. As December approached, a certain anticipation ran quietly among the refugees. We had no decorated pine trees, no shimmering pies, no banquet table filled with traditional foods, and yet Christmas was still alive. It pulsed in our hearts like a secret flame that refused to be extinguished. Someone on the island had saved a small guitar, others had voices trained in choirs long before the fall of Saigon. A few volunteers fashioned a makeshift stage out of wooden planks borrowed from the camp kitchen. It was nothing more than a raised platform with kerosene lamps glowing dimly in the sea breeze. But when the evening came, that little corner of Pulau Tengah transformed into a sanctuary of remembrance and resilience. The songs begin softly, familiar carols drifted into the salty air, đêm thánh vô cùng, silent night, sung with trembling voices, harmonizing not only with each other, but with the sound of the tide against the shore. I closed my eyes and imagined myself back home, where my mother used to hum the same melodies when preparing a simple meal on Christmas Eve. My father would sit quietly, gazing at the night sky as if searching for Bethlehem's star. Then came the song that pierced my heart like no other, những đồi hoa sim, sung by a gentle voice of the singer Phương Thu. It wasn't a Christmas song, but it carried with it a sorrowful beauty that reminded us of all what we had lost, our land, our families, our youth. Her voice floated into the night, mingling with the sound of the ocean. For a moment, the camp felt like a profound silence, and every listener was carried away into their own private landscape of memories. But the song that defined that night was Saigon của tôi, written by anh nhạc sĩ Phan Kiên. His words evoke the bustling streets, the youthful laughter, and the sweet chaos of the city that once were ours. My Saigon, he sang, and we wept quietly in the shadows. The music echoed far across the island as though it were being carried back to the homeland by the waves themselves. That night, as the song rose and fell, I felt an ache in my chest so sharp it was almost unbearable. I missed my parents with the longing that I could not name. I wanted to see my mother's hands, always busy, always gentle. I wanted to hear my father's calm voice again, steady as an anchor in the midst of storms. I was safe on this island, yes, but refugee's safety always comes with the price of separation, and on Christmas night that price fell heavier than ever. The good news: only a few days after Christmas, as the sea breeze still carried echoes of the songs we had sung, the news arrived that would change our lives once again. Our names were called. The American representative, with his careful list in hand, announced that our family had been accepted for resettlement. The destination, the United States of America, California, the very place where Anton's brother had already built his new life. At first, the words seemed unreal. I remember exchanging glances with my siblings. Our faces, a mixture of disbelief and joy. Then the reality sank in, and a wave of happiness swept over us like sunlight breaking through a storm. We were leaving. We were going to America, the land we had whispered about in dreams, the land where freedom stretched out like an open horizon, no longer would be a temporary exile, living in huts and waiting for decisions made by others. We would soon step onto soil where we could begin again, where we could work, study, and breathe without fear. The camp burst with congratulations. Neighbors who had shared rides with us, who had sat with us through nights of uncertainty, came to clasp our hands and smile through their own tears. For those still waiting, our news were both a promise and a reminder their day would come too. For us, it was the fulfillment of something we had barely dared to hope for. I thought of my parents again. If only I could send them another telegram to tell them that not only had we survived the sea, not only we reached Pulau Tengah safely, but now we were about to embark on the greatest journey yet. I imagined their relief, their joy, and perhaps their silent prayers of gratitude whisper into the night sky in Saigon. Memories of Pulau Tengah, though our time on Pulau Tengah was short, just 3 months, it left an indelible mark on me. The island itself was both harsh and beautiful. The air was always filled with mingling scents of salt and wood smoke. During the day, the sun blazed fiercely, baking the sand and leaving us searching for shade under thin tops. At night, the temperature dropped and the wind swept across the camp, rattling every bamboo wall. I remember walking along the shore at dusk when the sky was painted in strokes of orange and violet. The ocean stretched endlessly, whispering secrets in language older than any of us. The waves lapped against the rocks, sometimes gentle, sometimes furious, but always relentless. That rhythm became the background music of our days, reminding us of both danger and salvation, the sea that could kill us and the sea that had carried us here to safety. There were nights when we were startled awake by the sound of hurried footsteps. Rumors spread quickly. Bad men had tried to infiltrate the camp to steal from the already poor or harm those who most vulnerable. Refugee life was not without its shadows, yet each time the community rallied together, chasing away intruders, guarding one another with whatever makeshift weapons we could find. In those moments, fear mixed with solidarity, and even in danger, we discover a strange kind of strength. The island was also a place of friendship. In those 3 months, we met people who carried stories as heartbreaking and hopeful as our own. Families torn apart, lovers separated, children orphaned, all of us bound together by the shared wound of exile. Yet in the evenings, when laughter rose from the cooking fires, when someone strummed a tune on a borrowed guitar, we remember what it meant to be human again. Leaving Pulau Tengah was bittersweet. Part of me longed desperately to begin a new chapter in America, but another part whispered that I would miss the simplicity of island life, the quiet solidarity, the ocean breeze that wrapped around us like a shawl, the nights when the song became our prayer. A dream about to begin. As our departure drew near, I found myself lying awake, listening to the waves and thinking about the journey ahead. What would America be like? I pictured tall buildings, wide streets, and a life where food was never scarce, where school welcomed us, and where freedom was not just an idea but a daily reality. Yet I also carry with me a quiet fear. Could we really begin again in such a foreign land? Would our broken English and empty hands be enough to build a new future? What would it mean to trade the warm familiarity of our homeland for a cold unknown of another world? I thought of my parents again, and my heart ached. I wish they could come with us, and we could all step into this promised land. But life does not grant every wish. For now, I carry them with me in memory, in the hope that one day we would be reunited, not just in letters or telegrams, but face to face. Closing one chapter, on our final evening on Pulau Tengah, I walked to the edge of the shore. The sky was dark. The stars scattered like seeds across heaven. I stood there, barefoot in the sand, letting the waves kiss my toes and whisper goodbye. Goodbye to the island that have sheltered us. Goodbye to the friends who have become like family. Goodbye to the songs that have kept our hearts alive. The ocean breeze carried my words into the night, and I felt peace settle within me. Tomorrow we would leave. Tomorrow the dream would begin. Epilogue of the island. 3 months, just 3 months, yet enough to shape the rest of my life. Pulau Tengah was not home, but it was the bridge between despair and hope. It was where I learned that even in exile, the human spirit can sing. It was where I felt the deepest ache of missing my parents, and where I first tasted the joy of knowing that new future awaited us. Soon we will step onto America's soil with nothing but our resilience, our dreams, and the love that tie us together. Life in the United States were waiting, a new chapter, a new beginning. The dream was no longer distant, it was here, unfolding before our eyes. And as the boat that would take us away approached, I held on to one truth. The island may fade into memory, but the songs of Pulau Tengah would echo forever in my heart, like the eternal sound of waves meeting the shore. This is the end of chapter 27, to be continued.
Tell me all about this name, and it's difficult to say. It was given me the day I was born. Want to know about the stories of the